might as well start the meeting. I see it's after 7 o'clock. So call a master plan update committee meeting to order for Thursday, October 29th, 7 o'clock. Pursuant to the Governor Baker's March 12, 2020 order suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law, PLC 30A, Section 18, the Governor's March 15, 2020 order imposes a strict limitation on the number of people that may gather in one place. Town of Chelmsford Master Plan Update Committee will be conducting a remote public meeting on Thursday, October 29th at 7 p.m. So I think that's all we need to read. So the first item is open session. I don't see anybody for open session. Survey, I don't know why it's still on there, but I don't think there's any discussion. Fred's here. Fred, if you want to just give us a quick update on your committee, that'd be great. Or if you have anything new.
Yeah, okay, George, thanks. As I've mentioned at the last few meetings, the draft age-friendly action plan from Chelmsford has been under review in turn by the domain team leads, the Council on Aging Board, and the Master Update Committee. I'm in the final process now of incorporating the comments that I received from those reviews. I should send out the what I'm referring to as the master final draft to the domain team leads early next week for their review of all of the changes. And once that review has been completed and the comments incorporated, it'll be sent to the town manager for his review and subsequently to the select board for their review and approval prior to submittal ARP and their approval.
Okay, very good. Next item on the agenda is, I lost my agenda. Review of land use and zoning section with NEMCOG. Beverly or Jay?
That would be me.
Right.
So Evan sent out the revised draft, and the changes that were in this document, which Justin has put up on the screen, reflect what Evan sent me based on the discussion that you had at your last meeting, and also some comments that I received from George. So we're going to work with the track changes version that show George's comments as well as the changes that were made from the last meeting so that we can capture everything. So the first change is on the first page, and under the goal statement to the right in the call out box, the words approved master plan have been deleted and replaced with needs and goals of the community. And I think that was one of the suggestions that you had made, George.
Yeah, I had suggested that because every time on the 2010, every time there was a project that came before the planning board that was somewhat controversial, they always referred back to the master plan, saying it's in the master plan. And we always said that what's in there is a recommendation that, board should research and dig into further. So I wanted to take out a little bit of language there, just so that the developers stop trying to use that against the planning board. That's all. Maybe I'm overreaching on it, but it's just my thought. So.
No, I
George,
appreciate that being taken out.
George, this is Scott. I agree too, but I'm curious where would we point to the needs and the goals of the community so that if somebody asked where they are, where would we point them?
It's a good question. I mean, the needs and the goals change constantly. I know the selectmen come up with goals for the manager. Maybe that's not the right word to put in there. It just, I guess it's a good point. I mean, there's some goals in here which would be under recommendations. I would call this kind of a goal to at least look into them. maybe change that to character of the community. I mean, consistent with the character of the community or the changes in the community. I'm not sure, but, you know, I came up with those words.
I like the words. They're fine. I wanted to be curious. Do we have them in writing anywhere? That's all. The same goes for the community's character. What exactly is that character? Does everybody agree to it?
Well, everybody has a different opinion of the character of town. So, you know, it's the character of the neighborhoods, how things, you know, change, I guess. And you want to keep the neighborhoods kind of looking the way they are. People like the way they are now. I know that they don't like, you know, a lot of the duplexes that are going up or the big apartment buildings. So the character would be as more single family homes and that type of thing. So
Well, I think that would maybe the select board, right, to kind of describe the character of the community that says our goals for 2030 are to keep in line with X, right? So that everybody understands this is where we want the community to go, which is really not very far from where it is.
I think it's a stretch to expect that from the select board.
I think it's a combination of a lot of boards, whether that's being planning board or a select board. You know, the planning board looked at, you know, the amenities on 129, and that was a lot of push by a lot of people not to do it. But, you know, we came up with something at the time and that the goal there was to try to get those businesses out on 129, those buildings full or more people out there in the buildings. And that was kind of a goal of the master plan, was to help make sure that occupancy rates out in 129 stay high. And the thing that was lacking was amenities. So goal of the planning board was try to figure out how to do that, and they did that with the CEIOD and the BOD. So, but the community
On your
needs-
side, I was just thinking how to sort of kind of support the board of selectmen that says, you know, this is where the community's going. We're not trying to turn into Lowell or Lawrence. You know, we're trying to stay as Chelmsford, and that means with limited sort of commercial development with a focus on redevelopment, you know, we're not going to have a lot of commercial income, which is going to help support increasing taxes to keep up with inflation, and that's what we're choosing to do as a community. If you don't want to be this, you know.
Can I make a suggestion that the last part of that sentence just say, in a manner consistent with the community's character, and ensure that the town's zoning and land use policies and practices meet present day needs or current needs.
I like it.
It's
But we're forecasting a decade from now.
George, what you're really trying to do is just a play on words,
Correct.
because every zoning article that the planning board brought to the town meeting over the last decade was consistent. It was actually a recommendation within the 2010 master plan. Therefore, it was consistent with the plan. In a situation where a private property owner or a developer wanted to advance a recommendation that wasn't in the master plan, well, of course, staff and the planning board would hopefully go to the master plan to see if it were consistent. So, I mean, the right thing to say here is consistent with the master plan, because those needs and goals of the community should be articulated in the master plan. If they're not, related to managing growth and land use and zoning, then the master plan isn't serving any purpose.
The purpose to me, the master plan is supposed to be high level for boards to get down to the nitty gritty.
It is, but it's supposed to provide a predictable framework, which is exactly what it served over the last decade, where there were no surprises coming to town meeting.
Yeah, well,
Details.
I got very frustrated with
Yeah, that I understand. Yeah.
people coming to the planning board and saying, it's in your master plan,
Yeah,
it's in
all
your
the
master
ma-
plan, you know,
Yeah,
and
all the
they
planning-
think it's law.
All the planning board had to say was, we're reviewing you based upon a zoning bylaw. We've already implemented the opportunity. So.
I mean, can I just chime in a little
Just
bit
play
here?
on words.
Sure, Ken?
So I appreciate Scott's comments about looking to support the board. However, I don't necessarily know if, I mean, we only sit here for 3 years at a clip. And to sit there, I think, and expect the board to, I think we're here to support the master plan. We're not here to dictate our views of where the town should go over the master plan. I mean, the purpose of the master plan, my understanding was to project out where this group and the town wanted to go over the next 10 years. The Board of Selectmen should be aware of what the master plan says, because we really don't have any control over what projects come in front of the planning board and what they decide. I mean, a lot of that's out of our control. I've had no say in, you know, the apartment buildings at Grist Mill, or, I mean, never has that come in front of us for our decisions. So for as much as I could sit there in our meetings and say that the goal of the Board of Selectmen is to, you know, conservative growth in residential while filling up, you know, the commercial district, I mean, that's about the extent of it. I mean, Lisa knows, I'll do whatever I can to get a new tenant on 129. And even if the Mercury building wants to become residential, you know, sit there and support that. But aside from that, new projects coming on redeveloped land is, I think, sort of out of the board's control.
Okay. So are you saying just keep the words approved master plan in there?
I would suggest
I mean-
just say master plan.
Okay,
You know, I agree.
I mean,
with
I
you.
understand that, I understand where the residents of the town want this town to go. But if that's the case, if they want something different than what's written in the master plan, they should get active and become part of the process.
I
But
mean,
I
I think we
think,
can handle a lot of this conversation in the executive summary, which we did
Okay.
a pretty good job at, you know, the last go around, trying
Yeah.
to summarize Scott's comments related to how the document should be used, summarizing at a high level what the strategic vision is for the next 10 years. You know, the 2010 master plan was approved by the planning board. And even to Ken's point, even the planning board drastically changes during a 10-year period. And during that 10-year period, there were members of the planning board who didn't acknowledge the approved master plan because they weren't part of it. So, you know, I think approve should be taken out, because unless we're going to commit to every election cycle that the new planning board members are being asked, or either during the election cycle or being asked by fellow planning board members, the document is essentially a recommendation, as George said, and you rely on the individual boards and committees to do their research and advance the initiatives as they see fit. But I agree with George. I mean, boards aren't bound by it. There hasn't been any expectation of implementation. We tried to do that implementation committee, and that had various successes. So I think, to Scott's original point, dating back when we first started, and I think the committee agreed with Scott, that we need to do a better job trying to figure out how the town is going to use this document over the next 10 years, so that it's viewed as being more effective, so we don't run into the problems that George is referring to.
So I'm okay taking out the needs and goals of the community. I just threw it out there for discussion. You know, I'm okay with taking out the word approved. So it was basically practice consistent with the master plan, or it can be, we could put in there practice consistent with the recommendations made within the master plan.
And just to close the loop on this, you know, I think the executive summary or the introduction could have a disclaimer related to, George, what you're referring to.
Okay.
You know how in the first chapter there's what is a master plan?
Yep.
Maybe we add a sentence there.
Okay.
This is what it is, but this is what it isn't.
Okay. All right. I'm not going to get too hung up on it.
Yeah.
So I'll ask the other board members. Mike, your thought, just leaving the word master plan in there and taking everything out, the approved, and don't put the needs and goals of community in there?
I don't know. I'm gonna have to think about this some more.
Okay. Nan?
I'm good with taking out the word approved.
Okay.
But I kind of did like the concept of needs and goals of the community. But, you know, I have to agree that unless you actually point to the definition of needs and goals of the community, it's meaningless.
Okay.
And it just confuses the application.
Okay. Bill?
I'm fine with it, what you said, George, no problem.
Scott?
I'm real good with it pointing back to the master plan, George. I think that's right. The framework.
Okay. So then Beverly, the whole thing's going to strike and it's just going to say master plan there. Okay. And that would be on the same page at the bottom as well. So that paragraph, how do we want to word that? The last paragraph, the last bullet there. Just what opportunities exist to guide future development in fashion consistent with the master plan?
Consistent with the vision of the master plan.
Okay.
Or the recommendations of the master plan. But yeah, I think goals is the wrong word there.
I like the word vision.
I'm good.
Okay. Bill?
No, I'm fine. I don't
Okay.
really feel one way or another.
Okay. If I'm missing Ken?
I agree with Nan.
Okay. So that's gonna read, what opportunities exist to guide future development of fashion consistent with the recommendations of the master plan? Is that how you want that to read, Nan?
Yeah, I mean, I'm okay with the or other established community needs and goals staying in there, but I think the master plan should definitely stay. And I like the recommendations, the stress on the recommendations as opposed to the goals. I think the more we can say that the master plan is recommendations as opposed to requirements, the better off we are.
So I think just keeping a recommendation of the master plan, keep it simple, and
I'm okay.
all right.
Yeah, I'm okay with that.
Beverly, you got that? Okay, I don't know if we lost Beverly. Beverly?
Somehow I got muted. The next change is on page 2, the third paragraph down. Right there, Justin.
I
So-
don't think it surprises anybody that I'm not okay with this. I would agree taking out visioning sessions and public input forms, but I think we should replace it with the survey. And this is a section about the history of the town, and taking out preserving historic fabric doesn't make sense to me at all.
Okay. Anyone else? Ken, Mike, Scott, Bill?
Well, I have to agree on leaving historic fabric in there.
Yeah, I agree with Mike.
Okay. Scott?
I'm okay with leaving it in.
Okay. So, Nan, I think you wanted to read the input received during the master plan survey.
Yeah, whatever you want to call that survey that we did.
Okay.
But the feedback that we got with the survey definitely said preserve the historic nature of the town.
Okay. We'll rework that sentence.
Yeah.
Okay. Beverly, you want to keep on going? We'll just
Yep.
we'll rework that sentence afterwards.
Okay.
That was not my change either, by the way, folks.
Whose change was it?
I'm not sure.
Okay.
Because, you know, what I find, I was kind of in the back of my mind, I wasn't going to say anything. You didn't ask me my opinion. You were moving on, and I was going to leave it alone until you made that comment. But, you know, it blows my mind that you can go to town meeting, you can have historic commission stand up and say, we need this tool. You have the planning board support it, your finance committee support it, your board of selectmen support it, and town meeting votes it down. And it just blows my mind that, you know, you have people begging basically for a tool to save the old houses, and it gets thrown out just without really much thought, in my opinion. So I'm curious who struck it from that, but.
Ken, they are absolutely terrified of anything that adds any more housing units, period. And it doesn't matter what it is and what value is being put behind it. If it adds more housing units, it will get struck down.
So George, can we find out who else edits this for us?
I'm sorry, what was that again?
Who else edits this document?
It would have been either someone from the board or NEMCOG or Evan. So
Wasn't NIMCOG.
Yeah, and I don't think I would have made that edit. I haven't really made a lot of edits other than the direct data. But I'll look back. I'll look back and see what I sent to NIMCOG.
yeah,
I'm just curious, no big deal.
I wouldn't have crossed out historic fabric because I know Nan's on the committee.
That's right. And you knew that I'd jump on you for it.
And you notice I didn't speak out against your historic article at town meeting either.
I know, I thank you. You know, it had so darn little impact that it's like, oh God.
I'll talk to you about it offline.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Okay, so the next comment, when I should have caught this, is George pointed out that this section on Chelmsford Center needs to be updated because the land uses have changed since the last version. So there's no longer a grocery store. There's no longer a discount department store. But you do have, I don't know, Evan, what would you call the the rebuilding of the Marshalls strip mall? It's
all restaurants.
It is mostly restaurants. I think there's a gym in there too, right?
Yeah.
You know, between Summer Street and the mall there, it's all restaurants.
Not a bad thing, you know.
I didn't say it was a bad thing. I just said it's all restaurants. I still
Beverly,
want a
mean,
greengrocer.
it's just a new plaza, Beverly, or redeveloped plaza. It got rid of the grocery store and discount retailer, replaced it with
And then I
restaurants.
didn't know if you wanted to mention in here some of the housing that has been built in the center as well.
I think Grist Mill, yeah, definitely. There's another project before the planning board. I don't know what happened last night, but you could mention about the possible redevelopment of the Oddfellows building. Evan might be able to help you with that. Wouldn't hurt that there's a blurb there about it. Whether it comes to fruition or not is another story. So
I think I provided this update in, maybe it was the economic development section.
possibly.
Yes, you did. It's in the economic development section.
Yeah, okay.
So you can take some bullets from that and
Yeah,
just plug it in here.
yeah.
Okay, so the next change is on page 11. And this is our bad. I had sent your comment, George, to Jeff, who had updated some of the data, and for some unknown reason, there is actually an update to this table, which never got inserted into the final revised draft. So we will take care of that and update it. But Evan, George, one of George's comments was whether the Warren Pole property was included in here. Can you send me a street address or a parcel number for that so we can check?
I will. This table also needs to be reconciled with the open space natural resources section that I am updating and have presented to the committee. That table's a work in progress. At the end of the day, when we format this whole thing, those two tables will need to be
Should we just take this section out of here if you're going to address it in that chapter?
I'm fine with that. My understanding as to how the committee was going about this was they weren't deleting anything. But I'm fine with that because then it's only in one place rather than being repetitive.
Yeah. It's not essential to the land use discussion per se, so we could take this section out and then it would just be in that other chapter. Is everyone okay with that?
I'm good.
Yeah, I'm good with that. I have a question on this table, though. Is it worth adding in the amount of parcels and land that are under the control of the electric company? Because those are basically open spaces too. And there's a lot of land there.
You're talking about electrical easements, right?
Yeah, electrical easements. No, electrical ownership as opposed to easements. There's a difference.
Yeah, you're right. You're right.
I would say no. I wouldn't want to give anybody the idea it's something that they can go and use. I don't believe you're supposed to ride motorcycles, dirt bikes,
Jeeps.
do anything under them, you know?
Okay.
They're not technically supposed to be there. It's considered trespassing, so I would not encourage people to think that they can use it as open space.
Okay.
And we have accounted for that land area in another land use table under utilities, so that
Okay.
includes those right-of-ways.
Okay.
So
Okay.
why would the water supply district not be under utilities then?
Well, because theirs really is, I mean, it's undeveloped open space land. It's not, there aren't any wires over your head, and there aren't any necessarily a lot of pipes in the ground. So most of the
them,
land,
they're
the
open
land
to
that
the
they,
public.
yeah, and it's basically, the land is for water protection. It's not actually for use as part of the utility. Okay, the next change is on page 18. And think this was George's comment, and I'm going to defer to Evan because Evan had, the reason why this last sentence appears here is, I think, Evan, you sent me this even in the update, is that as far as we know, there is no developable land remaining in this district. Is that correct, Evan?
Nothing's changed. Is this RC? I'm not so certain about that. I know the multifamily, but our RC has seen. I mean, we just did Groton Road.
Okay, then we'll take that out of there
Yeah.
for sure.
In fact, 9 Turnpike, Ready Way. I mean, there's a bunch of recent two-family subdivisions.
Already on page 19 under residential multifamily. In the zoning bylaw, there's a sentence here that says that the planning board can grant a density bonus of 10% to an applicant who sets aside 10% of the units for low and moderate income for a period of at least 10 years. And George is saying, questioning whether 10 years is correct.
I'll have to check that.
Yeah, I don't know of any time limit on that set aside.
Yeah, that's an easy check. So
Yeah.
when I was reading this the other night, I wasn't going back to check. So
I get it.
This district is built out. The RM district.
So
Yeah.
I guess the reason why this was in here, well, the following sentence, which was struck in terms of being able to make progress towards your affordability goal now that you've reached your affordability goal, is the deed restriction part of this is important in that the 10 years is not really long enough if that is what it says. And in order to be on the subsidized housing inventory, the state requires that it be at least 30 years and strongly encourages that it be in perpetuity. So, Evan, once you check on that, that's something that this committee should decide. It's that the 10% set aside is fine, but the deed restriction should be for longer than 10 years in order to be eligible for inclusion on your subsidized housing inventory. Okay, we'll go to the next section, which is on page 24. And this is a sentence that says there is one CX district in town located east of Route 3 and north of Route 40. And George says he believes that there's a couple of other spots.
I believe there is. I thought one of the spots was over off of Industrial Ave. And I thought there was one where the town hall is.
So there's a district, which is what this is referring to, an actual zoning district, the CX zone, that is up on Route 40. And then I believe there's an overlay, and the overlay is located, I think, on Progress Ave.
So the last paragraph does say, in addition to the district, the overlay was established and is subject to the use regulations pertaining to the district.
Yeah, so essentially, my understanding of this is that at some point the town realized that the Swain Road landfill was illegal, and then they created an overlay district and put that out on Progress Ave in the middle of 129.
So we do have a map in here that shows the overlay districts. So I guess, George, it's a question between overlay and district. So there are two separate things.
Okay. Well, I kind of remember, this was prior to me getting on the planning board. I kind of remember what drove this is because down the street from me, where the Princeton is, there was a chicken place there, and they decided to have some entertainment one weekend, and then ended up forcing the planning board basically to come up with the zone. And what I remember is that you couldn't limit it to the one parcel, because then they could say that there was, I forget what term they used, but bias, that, you know, it was totally restrictive, and it was spot zoning or something like that. So that's why they picked another spot to do it. And they could say, yeah, we do it here and here, but it's, if it's right, it's right. If it's wrong, let's fix it. So.
You're going back to the question of RC, buildable land. In the RC district, there are 31 properties not owned by the town that are over 40,000 square feet. None of them are showing up as over 4,400. So I would guess that some of those lots actually could be split. But there's not a lot of them. And I don't have any way here of looking at properties that have more than one lot in a single property in terms of accessory lots, you know, under the same ownership. I can't do a search on that. But there's a possibility that there could be some of those as well. So I think the statement about there is no possibility of additional development in RC is not a valid statement. There's not much there, and you can't get any significant development, but you could indeed get extra lots.
Okay, and I looked up that other issue. It does say 10 years under on 195-63. So, but that is strictly for RM zoning, I believe, the way I read it. So it's not the inclusionary, which is different. So I still have my book.
Colleen just said, notice that new books are out.
Yeah.
Yeah, but me not being a planning board member, I think I have to pay for it now.
Evan, could you do anything to expedite that?
Is that George paying? Absolutely.
You know, George
Listen,
not paying.
No, I can get it online, thanks.
Yeah, I know you can, but then you gotta punch the damn thing.
No, I'll just keep it online and read it online. It takes up less room in the house.
It's harder to take notes.
All right, we gotta keep moving on here.
So the next change that needs to be made is at the bottom of page 30, where it still talks about the sign advisory committee, which has apparently been abolished.
They've been poofed,
That went
yeah.
away, went poof.
So we will delete that. So that takes us to the issues and opportunities section at the bottom of page 31. So the last sentence in the first paragraph under that section, there are some edits that were suggested to make this particular sentence read, the planning board should investigate whether improvements to the design review process are warranted for commercial/industrial and multifamily development.
I think I would edit that to say whether more improvements. We've actually made quite a few in the last 10 years.
Okay.
So just, Nan, these are the things that we talked about last meeting, so
I know.
I think we captured most of it, so
Yeah.
All right.
You got to be careful. You want a paragraph consistent with the bullet too that follows below.
I actually worked from the bullets and tried to revise the section to reflect what was in the bullets, so we'll see if I
Okay.
did it correctly. So the next change is in the following paragraph, the third line from the bottom of the page. So that sentence now reads, in late 2021, the planning board should review the impact of the section 195-8 revision to determine whether it has adequately addressed townwide development issues or if zoning revisions are still needed. Okay, page 32. George does not like the grammar here.
I just
So-
remember my English teacher yelling at me saying, "That's a run-on sentence." Maybe I was late when I was reading this, so. When you get-
It is a rather long sentence, I'll give you that. So I guess my question is whether
Oh, dear.
aside from the nature of the grammar, whether the concept and the thoughts that are here are correct, and I can work on maybe splitting it into 2 sentences so it's not quite so long. So it says the town should contact the mill property owners to identify issues/challenges in order to determine if modifying the CEIOD so that it applies to all mill properties, including those that are industrially zoned, is needed. Or if the town should work toward establishing a mill reuse overlay district bylaw to provide greater flexibility in reusing or redeveloping the existing structures.
Yeah, I think that's the essence of what we talked about.
It is. I mean, and that's,
Yeah.
you know, grammar aside, I agree with this.
Okay. Scott, Bill, Ken?
Yes.
Yeah,
Okay.
Okay, at the very bottom of that page, that last sentence was rewritten to now say, the planning board should perform a townwide analysis of the zoning map and ground conditions in order to eliminate land use conflicts between residential and commercial/industrial uses.
I'm okay with it. Mike?
I'm okay, but I'm not sure that that's the biggest broad issue in going over the zoning map and taking a good look.
Okay. Nan?
I have to agree with Mike. The big issue is actual lot sizes versus zoned lot sizes for the residential properties. While there are certainly inclusions of commercial use into some of our residential areas and a tendency at this point to put residential anywhere you possibly can, including the commercial industrial areas. I don't think that's the big conflict at this point.
So are
The,
you're more concerned about non-conforming lots? Is that where you're going, Nancy?
Yeah.
At some point in the past, we zoned much larger lots than we had in application, apparently to stop development. And the result is that we have vast neighborhoods that are non-conforming.
So
And-
I think it's worth stating that as a fact. And again, I mentioned at the last meeting, Nan has done tremendous amount of research, which I also think is warranted to put in here to set the stage at, related to data. The challenge I see with pursuing
Yes. I
modifying the
agree.
zoning bylaw, and let's say the farms 1 or farms 2, where the average lot area is 20,000. If you change the zoning bylaw, the map in the map, you are then creating additional lots. on oversized parcels, which brings us right back to town meeting sentiment, where they don't appear interested in creating any new single family or duplex opportunities. So I think that's a real can of worms, as opposed to trying to resolve the issue through the nonconformity, which was kind of the first step that the planning board decided to do. And then I think they said, let's take a look at it and see how that has worked, which is, I think, is what the master plan is reflecting. If town meeting were amenable to changing the zoning map where the Westlands and the farms were zoned RC or, RB1, and they were okay with potentially creating some additional building lots, well, then that would be the preferred option, because that
It
would
won't,
be
it won't happen.
exactly.
There's absolutely no way the town meeting's going to create
Exactly.
a more dense situation at this point.
Right. So I think the best we can do is codify Nan's excellent research, state the problem, and just leave it at that.
And leave it at that. I think it warrants a recommendation for analysis in here, but I don't think it warrants a recommendation for change in here.
What I was referring to on this, the way it's drafted now, I'll give you an example. Off of Middlesex Street, there are existing single-family neighborhoods that are actually zoned IA.
Mhm.
And those homes aren't interested in selling for IA development. They live there, they go into the zoning board to make additions to their single-family homes. So to me, that's what I'm referring to here.
Okay. Well, in that case, Evan, I think it's worth doing a full analysis, both of the residential conflicts, or residential versus residential zoning conflicts, and the residential versus commercial industrial conflicts. But I wouldn't recommend taking it any farther in the master plan than doing an analysis and determining if there was a problem that needed to be solved.
I'm fine with the sentence the way it is. So,
Well, George, why are we tying the sentence to the Route 40 corridor when we're talking about all places?
Yeah.
That's true. Good point.
It needs its own paragraph, and it needs its own problem statement.
I think the reason why it's there in the Route 40, which is probably, is just to point out that that is an example of a situation where you got commercial, industrial, and residential, and, it's, okay, put it in a separate paragraph if you want. You got no problem with that?
If,
But George, doesn't it also say the 2010 master plan recommended addressing these zoning conflicts
Yeah.
and specifically pointed out Route 40?
Yep.
And this is an update
Yep.
to that. So I
what
don't
if
think
we
they're
just,
necessarily,
what if we just added a sentence after it says, therefore, this issue remains resolved, and that basically says that other locations with similar conflicts are, and then Evan can send me a list of what comes to mind for him.
That wouldn't be bad.
That would work.
Okay,
I'm good with it.
all right. Evan, you okay with that? I don't hear Evan.
Yep, good, yep.
Okay. Let's keep on going.
Good. So, page 34 was the next change in the middle paragraph. So the second sentence rather, now reads, now that the town has reached its 10% affordable housing goal, it will need to consider whether the affordability requirement should be modified. So we took out any mention of specific numbers here.
Yeah, that's good.
Okay, and then at the bottom of that page, it says, the last sentence, in addition, the requirement that occupants be related to the homeowner should be reconsidered. And George has a comment that he is not comfortable with this language.
So I'll defer to the other board members. I have a problem with it. If I were in the planning board and this came before me, I would vote against it. But that's not my job here. My job here is to facilitate a discussion on it. I know Mike and Nan mentioned last time that they seem to be comfortable with it. I don't want to, I guess my question is that it would be a recommendation for the planning board to look into it, but it should not be a recommendation that we recommend that the planning board do it. So, you know, that's where I stand with that. And,
So, George, this is Murphy. It's hard to read that sentence without coming to the conclusion that it is a recommendation that a change be made. And I'm not sure how you reword that sentence to say, you know, that it's worth looking at without implying that you think it should be changed.
Can I try something here? You could say, in addition, the nature of the requirements between occupants should be reviewed.
Nature of the relationship between occupants?
Yeah,
Yeah,
or something like that.
or evaluated.
I'm not sure we necessarily want to change the requirement, but the problem we run into is you wind up in a situation where court decisions will decide what relationship is and isn't acceptable, and it won't have anything to do with what you put in these rules.
so I'm talking about that sentence and the sentence before that about allowing ADUs and freestanding structures as well, such as
Right.
detached barns and garages.
Yeah,
So it's that whole picture.
but there's more to it.
Okay, so I get it, and I think Bill's right to some degree, but I don't think it's as clear. It should be that someone could take this as saying that we're recommending that that the board should look at it and look favorably upon doing this.
George, would you be okay if reconsidered would be replaced with evaluated?
Evaluator would be better. I'm just trying to figure out where that would go in. Let me just see.
So the requirements should be evaluated?
Yeah, I mean, it's I just want it to be clear that the planning board should study this and not take this as gospel. That they should look into it in depth. And obviously they have to hold a public hearing on it. But to me, if it were me, I wouldn't even put this in this master plan.
Yeah, I agree with you, George. I'm more comfortable with it not being in there. Is someone clamoring for this to be in there?
I don't know.
Okay.
Well, Chelmsford has been part of a project in our office with, I believe, 5 other communities to just have a discussion about accessory dwelling units. We actually have a contract with the state to help our communities look at some of their bylaws on this issue. So one of the things that we have seen is that there are communities in our region that do allow these things. And even Dunstable, tiny little town that it is, allows this as a way of providing housing for people who are young people entering the workforce, or people who are empty nesters who are looking to downsize into a different living arrangement, who aren't necessarily related to the homeowner, but they're people that have housing needs. And when you ask people why it is they think these people have to be related to the homeowner, people have a hard time articulating why they think that is.
Yeah.
And it also allows people who are seniors who are looking for additional income to be able to readily bring someone else into their home to help them share the expenses. So these are the things that are being, discussed in other communities, and Chelmsford has been part of that discussion, although we've not asked any community to make an absolute commitment. And this is also something that, the state is trying to encourage to sort of meet the unmet housing needs that we have. And it's definitely among young adults and seniors that have the greatest challenges in terms of finding a better living situation for themselves.
So when I was on the planning board, we did make changes to this bylaw. We did expand the scope of the relatives that could live in the accessory dwelling. We increased the size a little bit. We increased, we allowed it so that when the accessory dwelling becomes available again, and it goes back into the part of the house, that if the house gets sold, then the next person that buys the house and needs that accessory dwelling does not have to go through the rigmarole of going back to the boards. If you open this up to people that are not related or a caregiver to the person, the homeowner, I think you're just creating a multifamily unit. And then that just opens up in my mind, opens up a can of worms.
I agree with George. I think it should be restricted, limited.
So that's my opinion. And so Ken, I haven't heard from you. I don't know what your thought is. You're on mute, Ken.
I am listening to what you're saying, and I think I'm pretty much in agreement with it.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'll just jump in quickly. I don't disagree with anything that's been said. I think this paragraph in this issue needs to be further articulated in the housing section. My hope and desire is that the master plan acknowledges that the town needs to evaluate and continue to assess additional housing needs and opportunities, particularly related to the age-friendly initiative. And maybe this master plan references or refers to housing opportunities for age-friendly purposes and kind of piggybacks on the age-friendly initiative. Whether it's expanding a limited accessory, or it's an introduction of limited opportunities for granny pods or tiny houses. Within the next 10 years, this will become more of an issue for the town. I'm not suggesting that the solution is to allow anyone to live in an accessory apartment. Right here, right now, I agree with the committee. I don't think it's a politically viable option, even if you got at the town meeting. But over the next 10 years, I think this issue will likely be looked upon slightly differently. And I think a lot of it will have to do with the age-friendly initiative.
Yeah, and this is Scott. I recognize the age-friendly initiative, but I also think about what's Chelmsford's going to look like in 30 years when we don't have quite the same needs and our needs change, and we've got all this properties kind of cutting up our character.
That's why I'm saying it could be temporary housing. The tiny house, the granny pod, where they're basically on wheels, and they're there for a specific purpose and a specific duration, and then they disappear. I don't know what the solution is. All I'm saying is that there's going to be a significant need for the town to change the way it deals with the aging population and the caretakers that are going to be needed for these people. assuming they want to age in place. I think what we've learned prior to COVID and during COVID is the trend of nursing homes and assisted livings is not what it once was. People don't seem to want to be placed in those kind of facilities for a variety of reasons. So the healthcare industry is looking to have people age in place. And so while the ADU provides a good opportunity for that, where it allows the caregiver to live in the ADU, a lot of people can't afford to put an ADU on. So all I'm saying is over the next 10 plus years, this is an issue that the town is going to have to figure out and provide new solutions to.
I think the two concerns I have is if there's a legitimate family reason to have an ADU, at some point that family need goes away and you still have an apartment there. And at the point that that property transfers, you've still got an apartment there.
But
so the
that
value
apartment-
that's lost. I'm just saying, George.
That apartment is supposed to go back into the living quarters of the
Yeah.
home. It doesn't stay as an apartment, is my understanding.
Right, but the
That's
80,
my point. If
but
the
that's
person
why it's
dies
attached
off,
to
you
the
have
house.
to take it out.
but the ADU, while the ADU was originally intended and designed for elder care, it could also be used where you have a college student who goes off to college and then comes home. So there's a
And never
variety.
goes out.
Yeah, so again, with the challenge, the economic challenges that young professionals face, aging in place, multi-generational families, the ADU is a great opportunity. It serves to provide solutions to a variety of family arrangements and healthcare arrangements. But it's not the end all be all. And there will be need for the town to consider other options because the ADU is not an option for all structures. It's financially very expensive. So that's just the context, but I do agree with the members who are hesitant here and now recommending that the existing ADUs not be limited to family as we currently define it. I don't think the community or town meeting is ready to change that.
No argument on that, Evan.
Maybe they will 10 years from now,
Uh,
but not right now. That's why I'm
No.
suggesting, I think the housing section needs to beef this conversation up and basically put the town on notice. You may not be ready now, but it may be an option that already exists on the books with some tweaking.
I don't think town meeting would be open to that until the economy crashes so bad that we've got a 10% open housing rate with the McMansions. And, at that point, then people will be desperate enough to do this. But other than that, they just don't want anybody else in town.
So, so where do we go? I mean, my opinion, I would take it out. But, or if that's not the favor of the board, then I would say that we rework this a little bit. And I would have to do that offline. I can't do it tonight. I'd have to think about it. But I'm going to tell you, and I suppose I should disclose, I have an ADU. My father lives with us. Okay, moved in over the summer. He's got his own place, his own in and out. We did it within the footprint of the house. We were fortunate enough we had that space. And then you could turn around and say, well, it's an apartment now, and I can rent it out. Person would have their own entrance in and out. I would just lock the door to my section. but I don't think that's what it's designed for. So just my opinion, and I just see it opening a can of worms that I wouldn't want any planning board to have to go through a town meeting. I think it would be very difficult. So,
George, I got a question for you.
okay, man.
And maybe it's kind of off topic, but you know, if a property has an ADU that they no longer need as the ADU, what happens when they go to the ZBA and claim that they will incur a financial loss by removing it and therefore request that they can
They don't
rent it to somebody else?
So what says they have to remove it? Okay. What my father has down there is he's got a mini kitchenette. I've been in houses in Lowell, especially of a certain nationality, that has a second kitchen in the basement. So, you know, it's a man cave for me. If something happens to my dad, it's going to become a man cave. So it just, you know, it's.
To answer Nan's question, so the current bylaw requires a deed restriction. It's a town council approved boilerplate deed restriction. That deed restriction says that upon change of ownership, if the new owner wants to continue to have the ADU in place, even if it's vacant for a later date, nothing needs to be done. If and when a property owner chooses where they want to discontinue it, they then notify the building department and the assessors. Discontinuing it simply means that you have to remove certain components, normally the kitchen, so that it no longer is defined as a full cooking kitchen. So people very often will remove the gas range, the refrigerator, things of that nature. So as George is indicating, you can have as many bathrooms and as full kitchens as you want in your home. It becomes a dwelling unit when it's a self-contained, independently functioning bathing, sleeping, and cooking facilities. So I don't think we've had any that have been discontinued because, as George is mentioning, even if it doesn't serve as an ADU, it can serve as a second kitchen. It just becomes part of the house. So that hasn't really been an issue. And I can also tell you that increasingly new homeowners or new people who are looking to buy new homes in Chelmsford are specifically looking for houses that have an approved ADU.
Okay, so let's not get too much more hung up on this. What do we want to do?
I recommend deleting it, putting it in the housing section.
Okay. Bill?
Delete it, totally.
Okay, Mike?
Yep,
Yep, delete it.
yeah.
Nan?
I think this whole thing's a housing issue, not a land use.
Yeah.
Ken?
Well, I'm going to defer to the 2 or 3 planning board specialists here, but I'm curious, Evan, as everybody's voting, you were laughing. Do you think differently here?
No. I've already clearly articulated. I agree. I wouldn't make that recommendation right now.
No.
Okay.
The town, there's no evidence that the town residents who are using ADUs
Hell, Evan, I
looking
wouldn't
for
make
this.
any recommendation to town meeting right now.
Yeah. I
All right.
would
Well,
just insert it
I
into
did delete
housing.
it.
Okay. All right.
Take out this whole paragraph.
No, move it to housing.
If you're not going to support it in the land use, you're not going to support it in housing either. So still part of the master plan.
The point is, we need to deal in housing with the demand for housing.
And we'll identify that. So if
But
I,
this doesn't need to be in land use.
if I identify,
Residential's residential.
if I identify this as an option for additional housing units and say that the requirement that occupants be related to the home owner should be reconsidered, you're not going to support it, whether it's in the housing section or the land use section.
Yeah, maybe part of the uncomfortableness here is that it was never considered to begin with. It's never been a consideration. So maybe where it says reconsidered, maybe that's what's giving George pause and a level of uncomfort.
Maybe it should just say studied. I mean, that's, you know, if
Studied.
you want to move that to the housing section, we'll move it to the housing section, but
Because I think it's important for the master plan. I think this is what George is struggling with. It's never been a consideration.
I think it should be evaluated as opposed to reconsidered. But it still belongs in housing.
I'm thinking, so if anyone else wants to chime in.
I would delete the sentence and move the paragraph.
I think Scott's got it. So move the paragraph into housing. And I would remove the last two sentences. So, and maybe we can let me think about, I would remove it. I'll think about the last two sentences, and if I think I can come up with something that makes a little more sense to me, I'll share that with the board. Otherwise, that's the way I would look at it.
George, I would not delete the second to the last sentence because over the course of the next 10 years, that's going to be a real big issue.
So that's your opinion? My opinion is,
That is my opinion.
I wouldn't have it in there. So.
If I recall what the committee talked about at the last meeting, I think we talked about considering putting existing freestanding structures. And I think at the time we even talked about maybe including a date so that people did not rush in.
Yeah, well,
As a first step.
right now, I'm of the two sentences, move the paragraph, and I'll think about the last two sentences, but I'm still not for freestanding structures to have an accessory apartment in it. I'm just not for it. I won't be for it. So, unless someone can really show me something that changes my mind, which I don't think they will. So, so let's take this. Are we all in favor of moving the paragraph to housing? Let's start there.
I'm good with that.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yes.
All right. So let's all think about between now and the next time we hit the housing, the last two sentences, and if someone can come up with some different wording there, maybe that's what we'll do. All right. So let's move forward. Beverly, we'll move forward.
Page 35. The beginning of the second paragraph, George's comment was, is this stormwater management? And let's make it clear, not everyone knows what MS4 means. So my suggestion is to add, after it says MS4 permit now in effect, add the words relative to stormwater management. There's so many things in that stormwater management permit that it would, I think, just make this a longer document and not really add a whole lot to the informational aspects that are needed to deal with the zoning piece of it. Is everyone okay with that?
Yeah, I am.
Okay, and then George thinks there should be in the first sentence, next paragraph, an S after food. So it's foods, but I hear when we refer to it as local food or just,
Okay.
Okay,
I
I
have
mean,
another
I go
comment.
shopping for food, not foods. So,
okay.
I have another comment on this paragraph.
sure.
I'm not entirely sure that Jones Farms is still running the CSA. You know what the situation is, Nan?
Could you repeat that, Mike? I only caught part of it.
Yeah, I'm not entirely sure that Jones Farms still offers a CSA. They had up till this last year.
But I
And
don't think they do this year, and I don't think they're operating anything next year.
yeah,
Okay, then we'll take that out of there. I just took this off the information that was on their website.
right.
Yeah.
Okay. Are there any other comments on that section, this is all kind of new, the text just to talk about the local food issue? Okay, George also had a comment to add some discussion on recreational or medical marijuana and the fact that it had been approved in Massachusetts, and some discussion about the town meeting vote to ban it. And then describe the different types of facilities that can be permitted, and basically have a statement that the planning board needs to study this and maybe bring a bylaw back to town meeting for some or all aspects of the marijuana industry.
So the planning board had mentioned this a little bit, I believe, last night.
Yeah.
And I think what confused people, or didn't really confuse, but it was so new when the town voted to ban it, banned it altogether. And they didn't realize there's actually 4 aspects to the medical and recreational marijuana, and that maybe we don't want retail, but we certainly can have production or
Research and yeah.
research and testing, and maybe even the transportation and storage aspect of it. So I just thought it was something to throw in there. So
George, I think it is something to throw into the master plan, but I think it should be addressed under economic development, not land use.
okay,
I think if this were to go to town meeting, if any aspect of this were to go to town meeting as a land use issue, I think it would be shut down immediately. I think the only chance of doing anything would be under economic development in terms of capturing business into the community. That would not affect the community. But basically, business that would be invisible to the community.
Evan, what's your take?
Well, I think it's in land use because it would require a zoning change.
Okay,
My
Okay.
editorial comment is, while I agree that it's worthy of study, the only interest we continue to get, and I think it's retail. So that leads me to believe that while in order for companies to do all the other activities, retail comes first. That's what they're looking to do in Chelmsford, is retail. Retail, and then retail grow, but it starts with the retail component as far as interest in Chelmsford's concerned.
well, that's why I didn't say not.
Yeah.
That's why I kind of said some or all of the aspects of the marijuana industry, because that would be left up for the planning board to have public hearings on and feel a gauge of the community at that point. And sometimes you got to take baby steps to get go forward. So let's say you did knock out retail, but what's happening now is more and more retail outlets, and communities don't seem to be having a problem with them. So, and as that goes, then I think the appetite might be a little different in the future. So, so I guess I'll go down the list. Mike, would you want to have something in here or not?
I'm in favor of broaching the topic in this. And
Okay.
yeah.
Ken?
Well, I've been approached by companies interested in coming to town. And my feeling in talking to a lot of the town meeting reps is that had voted on this, I don't know if it was clear or they understood that you could break it into different pieces. So I think it definitely should be broached here.
Okay. Scott?
I'm okay with identifying it as a recommendation to be studied.
Bill?
Agree.
Okay. Beverly, do you want to work up something with Evan, or you want me to be involved somehow, or?
I can take a crack at putting something together and send it off to Evan and you, and we can
All right.
come up with
And then-
something for the next meeting.
Well, what we'll do is we'll put something together and actually just send it out to the board members, and then they comment back to Evan on it. So we don't spend a lot of time wordsmithing it at the meeting, okay? Okay,
Okay, so revisions to the recommendations. So the first recommendation has been revised so that it now reads as outlined in the 2010 master plan. The planning board should investigate whether improvements to the design review process are warranted for commercial/industrial and multifamily development.
As long as that's consistent with the changes to the paragraph above, I'm fine.
okay,
And I think we said additional improvements above.
okay. So add the word additional in there.
The next recommendation is in late 2021, review the impact of the section 195-8 revisions implemented in 2019 to determine whether the revisions adequately addressed townwide development issues related to pre-existing non-conforming single and two-family properties, or if zoning revisions continue to be needed.
Is there a reason we said late 2021? Or is that just because we think that's how long it's going to take for this to get out the door?
I think that I wasn't at the last meeting, but my sense from what I received from Evan is that people thought that it needed to be in place for at least a year before evaluating.
I think it was at least 2 years. And maybe you just want to make it in 2022.
Okay.
Okay,
Alrighty. The next recommendation, this, just like the narrative before, it needs probably to be wordsmith a little bit to make it simpler, but contact mill property owners to identify issues/challenges to determine if modifying the CEIOD so that it applies to all mill properties, including those that are industrially zoned, or work toward establishing a mill reuse overlay district and bylaw to provide greater flexibility in reusing or redeveloping the existing structures. Okay, the next one, a town meeting/select board should appoint a town representative to monitor the Lowell to Nashua/Manchester commuter rail extension project and position the community to take advantage of transit-oriented development opportunities should the project go forward.
I think that should be town manager. Definitely not town meeting.
Okay,
I think you're right.
I think you put TM, Evan, and I thought you meant town meeting, sorry. Okay, planning board should conduct a townwide analysis of the zoning map and ground conditions in order to eliminate land use conflicts between residential and commercial/industrial uses.
I don't think an analysis
I'd
is
like
going,
to see the last phrase removed, but and ended at conflicts.
how's an analysis going to eliminate it?
The only way to eliminate it is that if they find a problem, then they have to bring it forward and fix it through a vote of town meeting.
So perhaps it should say in order to
Identify?
evaluate the need to eliminate land use conflicts.
How about just, let's just make this real simple, because we talked about this earlier. The planning board should conduct a townwide analysis of the zoning map and ground conditions in order to identify land use conflicts, period.
That's fine.
That's excellent.
That's fine.
We all good with that?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yep.
All right.
Okay, next page. Okay, the first bullet was unchanged. And the second recommendation, the word reduced was eliminated and modified was added.
Nice.
Yep.
But wait, okay, time out. Sorry, this is Scott. Can we go back to the one before this, that we should revise our bylaws to accommodate? Or should we consider?
I think revise is stronger because pop-up stores, e-commerce, fulfillment centers, and ghost and dark stores are becoming more and more popular. You know, as well as a few other things that the markets have changed. You know, in my industry, a lot of these fast food places are opening new stores with no dining rooms, strictly drive up, and they're putting multiple drive up order panels with multiple windows, which when McDonald's came to Drum Hill after the fire and they wanted to put 2 order panels up, we all jumped up and down and like 2 order panels. Oh my goodness, we were shocked. But the engineer said, if one thing that McDonald's does is they study the hell out of everything that they do. And that the 2 order panels have prevented backups out in the street. So, you know, it's these things are changing, and I think the town bylaws need to be looked at and revised to say ghost or dark stores either exist or don't exist in Chelmsford, and where do they exist? Same with fulfillment centers and e-commerce type stores. So I think revise is strong, and I think it needs to be strong. So, Mike, you have any comment on?
Oh, I absolutely agree with you, George.
Okay. Nan?
Absolutely agree with you, George. These things exist. We are either going to zone them in or zone them out. And if we zone them out, we're losing business. But one way or another, we need to revise our bylaws to address them.
Yeah.
Scott?
Okay, I'm fine. Okay.
Ken?
I'm good with that. Thank you.
Bill?
Agree?
Okay. All right.
Okay, so the third bullet down, this goes back to the ADU bylaw. So I don't know if we want to leave this until the next meeting when George has had some more time to think about
Yeah, I mean, we've
About the
already
issue.
chewed this one up pretty well.
We also agreed to move it.
We're great to move it, so it wouldn't be in this section anyway.
Yeah,
So,
we'll just take it out of this section and we'll deal with it next meeting. Okay, so the next change in bullet 4 is basically to just substitute the words allow for with the word encourage. And then the bullet after that, there was just some wording added so that it now reads, consider modifying the zoning bylaw and working with the Board of Health to allow and promote agricultural activities such as farm retail sales and artisanal farms in residential districts, blah, 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 blah. So those were the only changes to that. The recommendation beneath that, there's a suggestion to just add the word bylaw after inclusionary zoning. So the recommendation would read, the planning board should review the effectiveness of overlay districts, and it would say the inclusionary zoning bylaw every 2 years to determine,
Yeah.
say if updates, not of updates, if updates need to be made.
I'm okay with the concept. I'm just curious about how do you measure the effectiveness? What is that? How do you do that?
Evan, you want to tackle that one?
That's a great question. We've never really had a reason to, or went down that path of reviewing the effectiveness of a bylaw. There's a variety of factors that I think, the planning board could consider as part of doing that. I think the primary one at this point, and the reason that it's in the master plan to begin with, is public sentiment.
So I'll take a shot at it, I guess. So in my mind, we put quite a few overlay districts in, one of them the CIOD. And for me to measure effectiveness is how many people used it, what were the results, and what do we get out of it? So one of the things was we got apartments out 129. There was a restaurant application that was approved for Route 129.
So the effectiveness, our goals and objectives of the districts, of the overlays?
Yeah, did it achieve what the planning board set out to try to achieve? In these sections, right at the very beginning, is a paragraph that indicates the objective of the overlay. Did it meet that objective? Did we solve anything, or did we create more headaches than it's worth? The inclusionary zoning, we just transferred, how much was it, $600 and some odd thousand into the housing stabilization fund that came directly out of that inclusionary zoning.
Now that you've asked that question, the word effectiveness may be problematic because it's very likely that it's determined that the bylaws have achieved their desired goals, and now those goals over the next 10 years are changing or need to be changed, or there's a desire to change them. The planning board's articulated that, as far as they were concerned, one of the primary incentives or reasons that the planning board approved the overlays was as a means to get to 10% without having to rely on the 40B hammer. If that is one of the primary goals, then it's been very effective. In saying that, the planning board has already said that's one of the reasons that they intend to go back into these overlays to review them to see if they need to continue to serve that goal or should be revised to achieve different goals. An example of that is the overlays have created a lot of multifamily housing. Well, maybe the town's goal over the next 10 years is not to create as much multifamily housing and focus on the commercial opportunities within the overlays. So I think this bullet may need to say, to review its effectiveness, as well as determine changes that are needed to realign for the next 10-year goals and objectives. Because again, like I said, you could determine that they were very effective, but moving forward, you're changing the strategy. Which editorially, I think that's where we're going.
So maybe we say review the objectives and the outcomes of the overlay districts to determine if updates are needed?
My point is, I never viewed this bullet as a means to determine that they were ineffective and they should be deleted. While some may have that interest, I think the bylaws, what the bylaws have achieved to date is likely not the desire moving forward. And I think that's perfectly fine, because the primary goals and objectives of the overlay likely have been achieved, whether you like the outcomes or not. But again, I think that's for the planning board to articulate. But I think this bullet needs to be forward thinking rather than looking back. Mike, Nan, you guys have a different perspective?
Yeah, I think your last statement is probably the most significant, Evan, is that if we're reviewing it, we need to review whether the trends that we have seen from the use of these changes are the right things to go forward with, the right things to take forward, whether they support our future goals. But I can also see the concept that we also need to determine whether the changes met what we were trying to accomplish with them, because sometimes they don't. Sometimes that we think that we're going to get all sorts of new development activity from a zoning change, and it just ends up as a dud because there's no demand, no interest, no money, no whatever.
So maybe the bullet is the planning board should implement a biannual review of the goals and objectives of current overlays and inclusionary zoning to ensure it continues to meet the needs of the town.
That's
needs.
about the best you can do. And I think Nan made a very good point here. There are really two things in here. One is the overlay districts and inclusionary zoning, and we know the motivations there, and we know they may have changed. And the other is simply the fact of occasionally going back and looking at what we've done, which I think the planning board has not been very good at, of deciding after a couple of years whether what we did was effectively did what we thought it was going to do. If that can be separated into two bullets, that's fine. If not, just a statement that we should analyze the stuff every 2 years without saying what we should necessarily do with the analysis is probably okay.
But I think it's very valid here to have a recommendation that we do periodic reviews of whether things are working.
So what I have based on the discussion that just happened is a statement that now says the planning board should review the goals and objectives of the overlay districts and inclusionary zoning bylaw every 2 years to determine if the needs of the town are being met.
Yeah,
Yes.
I like it.
I'm good with it.
I'm okay.
Bill and Ken?
Fine.
Yep, no, I like everything you just said. I kind of scratched my head at the beginning of that conversation. I just learned something new, so I like everything you put forward.
And what did you learn?
Now, another night for that.
Learn?
We got to move on. We got a lot more to do.
Really quickly, George, Nan, I never would have realized how you measure success of an overlay until you went through that.
Yeah.
Okay. Beverly, you there? So,
Yes, so the next bullet would simply be something related to the marijuana review that we just discussed. So we'll have to craft some language for that for the next meeting.
okay. So we're running short on time, but next item on the agenda is economic development. We don't have that chapter, right?
It was sent out
Yeah.
early afternoon, mid-afternoon.
It was sent out to Evan early afternoon.
I didn't get it.
Oh, I've got it.
That was sent out today. We can't do it tonight.
Okay.
I told Lisa that about an hour and a half ago.
How about you want to maybe, since Lisa's here and she's joined us for the first hour and a half, maybe just hit Lisa's input?
Yeah, you can't do that to Lisa.
No worries. I've been listening. This is important to business development. I've been learning and listening all along. So, you know, I don't mind. Whatever the group plans to do is fine by me.
Well, you have 20 minutes. What do you want to do with it?
Well,
You don't have 20 minutes.
I don't want to rush through it. I know you've worked very hard and you know, I added my thoughts. We had some discussions at the last meeting. So if you want to,
Are we able to bring up NIMCOG? Are you able to bring up, and we'll just focus on Lisa's input, feedback?
Yeah, she can share her screen.
okay, let's see.
Evan, I didn't get that email today.
I may not have included you, George.
You didn't want me to make any comments, huh?
Okay, does this work? Is everybody able to see it?
Yep.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, very good. It is kind of awkward because in the middle of my screen, it shows, it's probably, as long as you can see it clearly. So do you want me to just go right to the bottom of the document? How would you like to do this?
Go right to where your first comment is.
Okay, I think I just kind of
This-
jumped.
This isn't the one with your comments on it.
No.
This is the updated one that I sent to Evan today.
Oh, okay.
So I incorporated your comments and Evan's and George's comments
Okay.
into the changes.
So maybe we should just take the last 18 minutes to just review the recommendations, issues and opportunities at a high level.
Or do we want to go to transportation?
Whatever the
Yeah.
group, whatever you guys want to do, it's fine.
Can somebody make a correction in the economic development one? It just tweaks me. On page 5,
Yeah, and if you have something to change, it's best that you email it over to Evan.
I'll do that then. That's fine. Yeah, there's just a couple numbers that are way off from being matching each other.
Just email it to him because
Yeah. Okay, so we're still heading to recommendations then. Okay. Where does it start? Here it is. Okay.
So I provided a whole issues and opportunities section that talks about the impact of COVID-19 on the community, both in terms of occupations impacted, industries impacted, that sort of thing. So that provides the basis from which I make the recommendations.
Okay.
What I'm saying is, there's a lot of stuff before this. This is what came as a result of the issues and opportunities.
All right, so let's go back to issues and opportunities. We'll go through this quickly and
Okay.
I'll let Jay explain some sections and you jump in, Lisa, and then we'll
Sure.
save our questions for the next meeting and we'll go through it as a board.
So Jay, do you want me to run this document or hand it back to Justin? What's easier for you guys?
I don't know, he has a document too, so
Oh, here's,
just
okay.
want to run it.
I have the same thing you do. I
Okay.
have the same thing you do.
Well, if it's easier, I can just stop my sharing so you're more familiar with this document since you've been editing it all along. Why don't we do that? And I'll
Okay.
follow along with you guys.
Thank you, Lisa.
Okay. All right, Justin, it's all yours.
All right, go ahead, Jay.
Go down to page 48, Justin.
Okay.
So on page 48, we summarize the impacts of COVID-19 on the town of Chelmsford in relation to the region, and talks about the overall problems that it created, about the primary industries affected, being healthcare and social assistance, accommodation, food services, retail trade, construction, and manufacturing. It talks about the occupations, the primary occupations impacted for Chelmsford and Greater Lowell were the same in terms of food preparation, serving related, office administrative support, management, sales related, and personal care and service. We modified the material on the Chelmsford Economic Development Commission. Talked about the hiring of the director and talked about the role they played in terms of advancing the master plan recommendations for 2010. Talked about the work we did with, NIMCOG did with the Economic Development Commission in terms of the completion of the Chelmsford Business Permitting Guide. And we had also worked with them on a business survey. The next paragraph largely came from Evan in terms of his comments about the state of development in Chelmsford. Talk about limited number of vacancies. And in terms of the need for additional housing to support economic development in the community. I think it reflects some frustration with working with town meeting and trying to get improvements made in terms of moving forward. But that's a reflection on the current development situation in Chelmsford.
Just jump, I appreciate that that's gotten in here. It needs to be wordsmithed.
Okay, that's fine.
I will send you a refinement.
Okay. Town has worked Middlesex 3 Coalition, talking about the barriers to development. Middlesex 3 Coalition, we're trying to figure out, they're supposed to develop a marketing brand for Route 3. I haven't seen it, so we're not sure what it is. And principally, Middlesex 3 Coalition is principally currently sponsored webinars related to the impact of COVID. Had a lot of good sessions talking about commercial developers and other types of things. So on next paragraph on page 50, the master plan took a look at, talked about approving the overlay districts. So one of the things we're doing here is showing what has been accomplished since the 2010 master plan. And talked about still the need for the mill reuse overlay district in North Chelmsford. In next paragraph, it's talked about the Board of Selectmen setting up the tax classification study committee, and then ultimately changing the tax classification to single tax rate. The next paragraph is pretty much the way it was in the previous document, just changing the name of Greater Lowell Mass Hire Workforce Board. They seem to change their name every 3 years. Talking about the capacity issues with sewerage and provided information. We tied in the information that was in the narrative section that Evan had provided, and talks about what needs to be done moving forward. He talked about Center Village and Final Square. Talked about the master plan for the square that was completed in 2013, and the results of the Chelmsford 2018 townwide business survey, sponsored by the Economic Development Commission. There didn't seem to be much support from the business community in establishing a bid, and also the town has been successful in terms of applying for some funds, but there's an opportunity there to still look at DIF funding to fund infrastructure projects, to CDAG and CDBG funds. Down the last paragraph of the page, talking about working with the Economic Development Commission, the Chelmsford Business Association, Greater Lower Chamber of Commerce, in terms of completing the 2018 townwide business survey. The results of that survey were provided previously in one of the previous sections, as were the results from the economic development results from the townwide survey. The next paragraph talks about the approval of the overlay districts, and I took some of the material from the narrative section provided by Evan, talking about the activities that have gone on in the Center Village. Talks about development opportunity at 9 to 13 Acton Road, and also the former mobile gas station and vehicle repair shop property. The Route 129 technical corridor, talks about the impact of Kronos leaving, the development of the Chelmsford Crossroads at Route 129, repositioning a suburban office park for New Era report that was done based on a site readiness grant from Mass Development, and basically provides a blueprint for moving forward in that area. Talking about town hoping to promote this area as one of the premier corporate destinations in the Merrimack Valley. We talked about Drum Hill area in terms of what was initially anticipated and what has happened in terms of self-storage facility, indoor contractors condo yard facility, the environmental remediation and closure of Glenview sand and gravel site, and the auctioning of the former 30-acre UMass West campus. Identifies the 10 Technology Drive. One of the things that you'll see in the recommendations is trying to focus on those e-commerce businesses, and talking about the different businesses that have developed as a result of COVID. Final Square, North Chelmsford Mill District, talks about what has been happening in that area. We did a work with the town on the master plan in 2013 for the area, and talked about the accomplishments that have taken place there. And also talked about the construction of commuter rail stop in the district as a component for that area. We go down to the next page, Justin. Look at the Route 3, Route 40 interchange area, and talking about the conveyance of the parcel on Oak Hill Road to the Conservation Commission, and talked about the different activities that have gone on there, and talking about the potential for 540 Groton Road. It could be developed for industrial purposes. That was what was in the previous document, so I don't know if that's changed. Route 110 Littleton Road area, I'm talking about the activities there, what has happened, and then we focus on the Route 110, Route 3 shopping district, talking about waiting for the results for the Route 3 study, marketing study, to be able to tie in there. Then we previously we had updated the potential development sites and included the map. We sent that site listing in the map to Evan earlier. And then we go to recommendations. Talk about COVID-19 pandemic in terms of the negative impact of the health and economy of the nation, state, region, town of Chelmsford. NIMCAR recently received a technical assistance grant in the CARES Act to develop an economic recovery and resiliency plan and bolster the capacity of greater local communities. We'll be wanting to work with the town of Chelmsford. Lisa is on the SEDS committee and will be working with us on that to see how we also not only address the problems for the region, but address community problems in terms of moving forward. So the traditional industries have been impacted by COVID-19. We're talking about the growth of e-commerce, talking about the distribution and fulfillment centers, and ghost kitchens and dark stores, providing alternatives to restaurants, and talking about the town staying focused on these changes for the location in Chelmsford. Then we provide information on supporting the efforts of the Economic Development Commission. The outline establishing business resource team to support all existing businesses. A lot of these comments were from Lisa. And we're talking about implementing a roundtable forum in affiliation with a regional partner, such as the Middlesex 3 Coalition, addressing industry-specific trends, objectives, and problem solving on issues such as workforce development, real estate needs, municipal resources, forecasting plans and unmet needs. The number of other items listed on the next page. Talking about added focus on business success and talking about the needs for businesses, types of things that the Economic Development Commission can provide. Talking about review zoning for marijuana facilities except for retail. And explore the development of the TIF SDA policy to be proactively utilized to promote economic development. And upon the completion of the Route 3 highway interchange market study, determine the next steps for implementation. And nurture entrepreneurship by creating market spaces, incubators, and commercial shared kitchens. And examine mechanisms for increasing small-scale neighborhood business opportunities in strategic locations. So this next recommendation talks about using the brand strategy being developed for the Route 129 Crossroads area. Talking about the strategy to expand the Crossroads identity using the high-value existing tenants to establish credibility with prominent companies with notable achievements. And talking about the endorsement of the package deal of technical assistance, regional partnerships, expedited permitting, zoning accommodations, direct team support, and educational resources for technology-driven high-value industries. So on expedited permitting, the Chelmsford Business Permitting Guide was completed a few years ago. Talking about updating that as you move forward. The fact that the town has it on their website provides an opportunity for businesses to check it out before they come to town hall or before they talk to different permitting agencies, find out what the procedures are. And there are also specific outlines in there of what you can do for different types of businesses, whether it be restaurants or other types of facilities. Talking about explore the acceleration of redevelopment. Talking about reviewing the overlay districts, just as you talked about on the zoning section. And I think one of the things you want to try to do is whether or not those overlay districts are providing the community with what it wants. I mean, there may be too many housing units coming from the overlay districts as opposed to not enough commercial activity. But that's something you can take a look at as you move forward. The mixed-use redevelopment district along Route 110. And then you talk about down below about working with the Greater Lowell Workforce Board, focus on employment needs of industries. And Lisa mentioned that she would provide more direction on the training needs of industry partners as well as future skill needs. Talking about the need to identify space, what available space there is in the community. One of the things that private investors are looking for is perhaps getting information on that on a community's website, see what's there, so that they know what the opportunities are. You often run into problems with brokers about that information, but it's something that'd be useful to industries or investors. On the capacity issues for sewer water system time of implementing recommendations and water Sanson report, and to determine whether additional capacity could be available for the Lowell Regional Wastewater Utility or the town of Borica. And then you have a warrant article for the fall town meeting to address some of those issues as well. This capacity issue for sewer is going to affect the whole region, not just Chelmsford. So it's something that other communities will be looking at Chelmsford to see how you deal with it. About exploring funding opportunities on the bid, DIF, CDAG, and CDBG. And then based on the results of the Chelmsford 2018 townwide business survey, about identifying the needs of the community, business community, or at least the 88 businesses that responded. And also need to deal with the other side in terms of identifying what the commercial needs of the community are. We're talking there about trying to determine that and then working with Mass Development and the Mass Alliance for Economic Development to identify specific businesses that could address these needs. You want to continue to focus on the extensive redevelopment and mixed use responsibilities on the next page. Center Village, Chelmsford Street area. I'm talking about using the CEIOD and CBOD to promote zoning flexibility or maintaining the community character. Talking about increased focus on Route 129 technology corridor, and talking about developing a network of stakeholders within the Crossroads Technology Park, determine their business needs, or how the town can better provide resources and communicate in ways to establish a strong partnership and implement improvements to promote a cohesive area and business destinations for signage, refining measures for increased connectivity of walking paths and collaborative events. You've already moved forward on part of that with the housing choice development grant, addressing some of the infrastructure issues there in terms of some of your walking paths. Talking about Drum Hill study in terms of whether that'd be a good place to try to encourage distribution fulfillment centers for ghost kitchen and dark stores. Next one is talking about extending the commuter rail service. I'm going to continue to implement mixed-use redevelopment district on Route 10 on the western side of Hunt Road to Chamberlain Road, and build on the redevelopment opportunities in the Chelmsford Street, Route 110, Route 3 shopping districts, and talking about determining what steps need to be taken once the Route 3 highway interchange market study is completed. And the last recommendation is prioritize the potential economic development sites for the ADC and Community Development Department to implement. So that's a brief overview of the issues and opportunities and recommendations. And I'd welcome your comments, your written comments, prior to the next meeting, and I'll make the necessary changes.
Okay, we're gonna go to Lisa. Lisa, you have any comments on those last sections or?
I don't. Thank you, Jay, for really doing a great summarization of what I provided. I have to admit, this is my first time participating in a master plan. I didn't have this opportunity in my prior roles and the jobs that I've had. So it's been a great experience to see how much opportunity this is to have this all documented down on paper. We've talked about it I've been here 3 years almost, turning 3 years in January. So it's great to see all of this future opportunity and potential in my work going forwards, and I really appreciate it. The only small comment I had was at the bottom of page 56, I believe. I think it's the second bullet to the bottom there, and that where it says in that second bullet, create a TIF STA policy to attract redevelopment or STA agreement to incentivize property investment, perhaps.
Okay.
And aside from that, I do think a lot of work has been done on this document, obviously by all of the red font. I don't have anything else to add, but I'm really looking forward to having this as an actual resource and tool for me working forward. So thank you very much.
So at this time, because it's getting late, so what I like the rest of the board to do, since we didn't get this till late, is take this home, or you're at home, read through it, do track changes. If you can't do track changes, put it on a piece of paper, reference the page number, reference the bullet, whatever you got to do, make notes, send them to Evan. Okay, do not send to all. And then what we can do is next meeting, we can go through them one by one, like we did last meeting, and make any comments and changes. If NEMCOG's not with us, then we'll get those to NEMCOG and incorporate those in so we can kind of finish this up. All right? Are we all in agreement with that? Or I'm gonna go to Mike. Mike, you okay? Nan, you okay?
Yeah.
I'm fine, George.
Ken?
All right, John. I'd appreciate an opportunity to see or hear the comments. I mean, you can send it directly to Evan, but Evan can forward it to me. And,
Yes, absolutely. He'll forward it to
sometimes
me.
I can provide an explanation on why why stuff was in there.
Yeah, what we'll do is we'll forward to Evan, and Evan will forward it to you,
Okay.
and to NEMCOG, and then before the next meeting, Evan will send them all out to the board members. What we used to do in 2010 is everybody sent it to Evan, and when Evan sent out the agenda, he would send that out, so we had everybody's comments in front of us, and you know, so we could work through it. So so we'll do that. We had the transportation section on the agenda. I guess we'll leave that for the next meeting. Or do we want to even attempt to do anything with it tonight?
Definitely not. The town manager and the town's traffic advisory committee are in the process of updating that.
Okay. So we'll let that fly until another meeting.
Same with facilities.
Yeah.
I believe they're on their second version. So at the next meeting, you know, like my suggestion is the committee can do a thorough review of the economic development section.
Yep.
And then transportation and facilities.
Okay. So
What do we have for a date?
So the next date would be the 12th of November. Next Thursday is the 5th, and after that's the 12th. So we'll do the 12th. And after that is no good because that's Thanksgiving week. So do we want to do, then we get into December. And if we do the 2nd and 4th, that brings us the day before Christmas.
Are you trying to schedule a second meeting in November, George?
I would like to schedule something, because otherwise we're going to have, the way it plays up now, we'll have one in November, one in December. We can squeeze another one in, maybe December 3rd.
Yeah.
And December 17th. That would get us 2 in December.
All right, so
That'll be
no,
the first and third.
no second meeting in November,
Correct.
December 3rd and the 17th.
Yeah, that would be the first and the third Thursday of December.
Do either of those work for NIMCOG?
I believe so.
3rd, I think, works.
The 3rd, okay.
Okay, so we'll have you back in on the 3rd. How about the other board members? Do those dates all work for you at this point?
They look good right now.
Fine.
Scott? Nan?
Yeah, I'm
Ken?
looking
I'm
good.
good.
Yeah, I just checked them.
Final question. Based upon these meeting dates, NIMCOG, do you anticipate issuing the housing section for any of these upcoming meetings?
Do it sooner or later.
Yeah, but probably targeted for the 3rd.
Okay. You know, I think that's the only chapter that the committee hasn't reviewed or discussed or engaged with. And if all goes well, I mean, we could be looking at, I would think, January, February, maybe to wrap up.
Okay, let's not get too far ahead of ourselves.
You are the optimist, Evan.
Evan, I wouldn't even broach that question until after the holidays.
I thought you guys wanted me to broach that topic. I'm sorry.
I think we're making actually pretty good progress at this point. So let's keep, I don't want to lose that momentum. We lost a lot of momentum, you know, March, April, May. So
I think town meeting is looking forward to an update in April. A report, I should say.
maybe. We do have 3 sets of minutes to approve. Has everyone been able to look at those and we can knock those out? We did the 7/16 last meeting. So we have 8/13, 8/27, and 9/10. So anybody have on 8/13? Anyone have any questions, additions, omissions? I believe Vivian sent those to you
Yeah,
a while ago.
yeah, it's a week, something like that.
Can I entertain a motion to approve the 8:13 minutes?
I'll do it.
I'll do it, Mike.
Yep.
I have a motion
I'll
by
second.
Mike. I have a second by Ken. I guess I have to do a roll call, right? Mike,
Yeah.
Ken,
Yo. Yes.
Nancy,
Pass,
what? You're passing?
pass. I'm passing.
Okay, Bill?
Yes,
Scott, you were not at that meeting, so we got myself, Mike, and I'm yes, so 3, 4, 0, and abstain, I guess, 2 abstentions.
Abstain.
Okay, the 8:27 minutes. I have a motion to approve.
I'll do it.
Mike, Mike's motion to approve. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Ken. Mike,
Yep.
Ken,
Yes.
Bill,
yes,
Nancy,
Abstain.
and Scott. You weren't there, so you're supposed to abstain.
Not present.
Okay, so we got 402. And the last one is 9:10. I have a motion to approve.
Why not?
I have a motion by Mike. Do I have a second?
Was I there that night, George?
You were not there, Ken, so you or Scott were not there, so you cannot,
Maybe we ought to defer that one then.
okay.
You know.
All right, so I don't have a second, so we'll take that up at the next meeting. Any final comments from Evan? Lisa?
I'm good.
Jay? Jay?
Well said, George. Thanks.
Beverly? Justin?
Nope, I'm good.
Fred?
No, I'm good, Judge, thanks.
All right, I'll take a motion to adjourn.
You got it.
What am I, Chubb liver?
Oh, Ken.
He didn't ask me either.
Justin, I'm good.
I asked everybody that was non-committee members. Are you all set, Ken? I don't want you left out.
We're good. Have a good night.
Okay, motion to adjourn. I get a second. All
Second.
those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Unanimous. Thank you.